already healed, hitting them like a stimmy. Like that stimulus check, getting you what you need when you need it.
Welcome back to Ball Don't Lie here on Penn State Sports Night. Hunter Pitcoff here, Matt Szczypiorski. You already know the deal. Episode 41, now kicking it off here. We had our 40th episode last week, but, got to keep improving, taking it week by week. But we are going to start this podcast a bit on a sadder note, unfortunately. The great Elgin Baylor did pass away yesterday at the age of 86. Had a phenomenal career. I believe he's one of the most underrated players in NBA history. Averaged 27.4 points, 4.3 assists, and 13.5 rebounds for his career in 14 seasons. Was an 11-time All-Star, 10-time first-team All-NBA, and really was kind of a pioneer ahead of his time. Only 6'5", but played that 4 position and really showed the versatility to play on the wing, being a dominant scorer in his era, and someone that, if you're being honest, a lot of players today may not even realize it, but they probably model their games after Elgin Baylor a ton.
Yeah, it's a great loss for the NBA, of course. Rest in peace, Elgin Baylor. He was the first overall pick of the 58 draft to what was then the Minneapolis Lakers, not the Los Angeles Lakers. They were a struggling franchise at that time, both on and off the court. They didn't really fit in Minneapolis that well. He quickly turned them around, though, and brought them to the finals in his rookie year, which is astounding for a team that was so bad the year before. And he was actually named the best player to never win a championship during his playing days. And the year he retired, the Lakers won the title. So that kind of sucks for him, but great player.
Yeah, at least he was able to live to see his statue be built outside of Staples Center, too. The Lakers, ironically, actually, their city edition jerseys, every year they honor some sort of Laker legend. And it was the Minneapolis Lakers, and more specifically, Elgin Baylor. So they did wear those jerseys yesterday, although they did get smoked by the Pelicans. So that's not great. But, hey, LeBron and Anthony Davis are out. Don't want to get into it too much further there. But, of course, we have known AD is going to be out for a while. But LeBron James did suffer a high ankle sprain against the Atlanta Hawks. He's expected to miss about 3 to 4 weeks here, Matt. How are the Lakers going to hold up?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a huge loss for the Lakers, obviously, and honestly for basketball as well. It just seems like every star player is getting hurt at the same time, and it's just not great for the NBA, especially the time when they're competing with college basketball. MLB's coming back, NHL, of course. And the Lakers just honestly looked awful last night without him and AD out there. I think they'll struggle mightily without him if they don't make a move, because quite honestly, this roster is built to win around LeBron and AD, and if you don't have both those guys out there, they're just kind of not great, honestly.
And while the Lakers are deep, they did work on improving their bench and their rotation players, definitely. But again, not having two arguably top 5 players in the NBA and not on the court is definitely a big difference. And LeBron James, we know how much he affects the game in so many different ways, not only scoring, but also being a leader out there, setting up others to put them in positions to succeed. This is definitely a big loss for the Lakers. If I was them, I would not rush him back, though. That is not a good idea. This is a team built for the long haul, a team built for the championship. I think they will get by enough where they may not get the 1 seed now, but they will probably still make the playoffs and be a dangerous team. This is also a really good road team. They play well away from Staples Center. So I think as long as the Lakers are healthy and have enough in-game chemistry entering the postseason, I think they'll be good.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely make a postseason. There's no doubt about that. They have too good of a record right now to even miss out on the playoffs, even with that deep Western Conference. But like you said, Hunter, you got to rest both LeBron and AD until playoff time, until you start getting towards that time, because you can't rush them back. Because then if it's a lingering injury going into the playoffs, that ruins your chances for defending your championship.
Yeah, like we've said, the Lakers, it seems built for a championship, and that's the only thing on their minds right now. They're gonna play it smart, I think. But looking at the new at the Charlotte Hornets here, LaMelo Ball has had a phenomenal season, runaway for Rookie of the Year, but unfortunately fractured his right wrist this past week, and he has been ruled out for this season. It's really a shame. This guy was one of the up-and-coming stars, I think a superstar in the making, if we're being honest. One of the most talented players, maybe in the NBA, if we're talking pure talent. Box office, ESPN, love to talk about him, but for right reasons. He really was that polarizing, that much fun to watch. Matt, how do you think this affects the Hornets? And do you think that this is going to ruin LaMelo Ball's Rookie of the Year case?
Well, I was actually wondering that as well, whether that's going to affect his Rookie of the Year case as well, especially, we've seen players that have played only a little bit. We saw with Zion last year. John Morant ended up winning the award, but Zion, if he had played the whole season, might have challenged him for that award. He only played 25 games and still had put up good enough numbers to be considered for Rookie of the Year. But LaMelo Ball and LeBron are both out, man. We're going to have to pour one out for SportsCenter and How's the Highlights, man. What are they going to post? They're not going to know what to. They might have to go back to Zion for
Yeah,
all we
God
know.
forbid, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously it's a big loss for a Hornets team that was trending in the right direction, especially with him in the starting lineup. But I think they'll still be a play-in team. I think they're still a competitive team. And I think, this shows Michael Jordan and the rest of the front office there in Charlotte that they can build around this guy. And if they give him the right pieces, this could be a good team in the Eastern Conference for years to come.
Absolutely. LaMelo Ball proved that this guy is their guy. This is the franchise player. He proved that this year, and he's only going to get better. He was arguably one of the best point guards in the NBA right now in basketball, which is crazy to think, but he really was on the up and ups and has improved every single month he's been in the NBA. Now for Rookie of the Year, unfortunately, I'm fine with him winning it. He's definitely by far in the lead, but seeing how Tyrese Halliburton has played the whole season and will probably continue to get better, and seeing Anthony Edwards really playing well recently, he has been phenomenal for the Timberwolves, and they're starting to win a whole lot more games too. It's going to be interesting because, of course, LaMelo, we know, is the best player. We know had he stayed healthy, he was going to easily win this award. But there's a couple of guys that are going to make it really tough on him, Matt. So I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think Anthony Edwards would probably be the guy in second right now just because of the name, the notoriety, first overall pick. He'd probably be the favorite outside of LaMelo. And if he continues to play the way he's been playing, continues to put up these gaudy numbers, continues to dunk all over people, I think he could end up winning the award just because LaMelo's been out the last final 2 months of the season.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards has been an absolute monster. This is someone who I thought him and Melo were a bit neck and neck as that top overall prospect in the draft. We obviously talked about Tyrese Halliburton even before the season started, how we thought he went way too low. So we're not really overly surprised that he's been playing well either. So it should be an interesting race. And also, too, when we're talking about injuries, Joel Embiid, probably two front runners for MVP, LeBron and Embiid, now both are going to be out for a little bit. The Sixers, they want to be cautious with him. They want him to be 100% come postseason. Now, we've talked about how the Sixers have struggled at times without Embiid on the court, but we know his injury history. We know the Sixers are in a position to contend for an NBA championship this year. How do you think they're going to play it out?
Well, I think especially with how the Sixers have been playing recently of the last 2 weeks since the All-Star break without Embiid, they've actually played really, really well without him. They've only lost one game since coming back from the All-Star break, and that was an overtime loss at home to a Bucks team that was playing well, that is playing well. So there's no need to rush him back, especially, with where the Sixers are right now. Being in top contention right now for representing the East in the NBA Finals. They still hold that 1 seed over Brooklyn by the hair of their chinny chin chins, 1 game over Brooklyn because both teams just keep winning. But I think they absolutely should be cautious with him going back. Obviously, I watch his team every night, so I think there's no need to rush him back right now. Being cautious is the right call, especially considering his injury history.
Yep, and that just means that guys like Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, Shake Milton actually playing pretty well recently too,
Hell
needs to step up and make sure that the hold down the fort while Joel Embiid is nursing an injury. And speaking of nursing, Nick Nurse himself kind of got into it with Pascal Siakam a bit. Siakam getting fined $50,000 for using, quote, several choice words toward Nick Nurse after the loss to the Cavs. Raptors have really been struggling recently after they were really hot for a while there. It seems like that this team has a lot of turmoil surrounding them, a lot of speculation come the trade deadline, a lot of uncertainty about the direction this team is going in. This is not the first time Pascal Siakam has been fined by the team this year. It doesn't seem like I don't know what's going on with him. But I am just wondering what those several choice words are that led to a $50,000 fine.
That's what I'm saying, man. I just to be a fly on the wall in that locker room right now. This team has some bad turmoil, as you said. Especially come trade deadline, it seems like Kyle Lowry could be on his way out the door. This team is really, really bad, man. Like, real bad. They've fallen all the way out of the playoff picture again, which is where they were to start the season, and gave the Rockets their first win since Tom Brady only had 6 rings still. So this team is in free fall right now. I think there's no saving this team right now.
Yeah, unfortunately for Toronto, there's definitely some issues there right now. I don't know if the trade deadline is going to solve anything. But we'll see. We'll see what they're doing. If they're going to, I doubt they're going to add anybody, but we'll see if they trade some of their big pieces. We'll get into that later a little bit, but great transition because the Rockets did beat the Raptors. Their 20-game losing streak is now done. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Houston, but we'll see. Head coach Steven Salas obviously entered a terrible situation. James Harden didn't want to be there, didn't even bother showing up to training camp and stuff like that. Doesn't sound like Victor Oladipo wants to be there either. A lot of these players just aren't really bought in, but they were able to get their first win of the season. John Wall backed them up too, and tried to give him credit. He had triple-double in that win, Matt. What are your thoughts on this? Are the Rockets still the worst team in basketball?
Oh, yeah, and it's not close because just like you said, it seems like everybody has checked out on this team. Everybody's checked out on that coaching staff. Oladipo does not want to be there, nor should he. John Wall seems to really be trying hard just in the few games that he actually plays. Christian Wood seems to be trying hard because he's earning that money. The young players are trying hard, but you look at veteran guys. PJ Tucker, when he was still there, was not trying hard at all. He's only averaging 4 points in the year. Eric Gordon is not playing that well. Oladipo obviously does not want to be there. They should trade every one of those guys. Obviously, trade John Wall if you can, just because of his contract doesn't really fit in the Rockets system right now. But I just fear because of his contract and because of the unknown surrounding him with his injury history that he's probably not going to end up traded. And then side note, has anyone heard from DeMarcus Cousins recently since he got released by the Rockets? It seemed like he was going to get signed by somebody, but he just hasn't.
Yeah, I guess no one's interested in getting Boogie Cousins on their team. I can't speak too much to that. But like you said, Matt, we talked about this on the podcast a lot, is definitely going to be a fire sale in Houston. Players are going to get traded left and right. I wouldn't be shocked if they trade 3, 4, 5 players at the deadline. I really wouldn't. I think they're going to accept just about anything for those players because they'd be stupid not to, in my opinion. That's why I think Oladipo's definitely getting traded somewhere. I predicted it'd be the Golden State Warriors just because I've heard the interest there, and it makes a lot of sense. They have the draft picks. They got the cap space to make it happen, the players. But I don't know. Do you think it could be anyone else? Do you think the Warriors might be the front runners? What's your take on that?
I think Miami would be a good fit as well. If Miami is willing to give up one of Tyler Hero or Duncan Robinson, I think that'd be a good fit there. Oladipo's a better defender than both those players and obviously more proven. He's got more time in the league than both those guys. And honestly, Hero and Robinson have both been struggling, so I think that he could use Oladipo.
Would you do that if you were Miami?
I think that's tough because it's tough to give up on both of them right now because they're so young still and they played so well in the playoffs last year in the bubble. It's tough to give up on them after a tough couple of weeks. And Oladipo obviously is on an expiring contract, so there's no obviously commitment there with him signing long term. So I don't know. I think if the Heat are serious about winning a championship, I think they should consider it at least.
Yeah, I'm a lean toward no, just because I think the Heat are either first or second in the NBA in cap space entering this free agency. So I think they'll just end up signing him. And I heard he does want to go there. So that's why I'm leaning a little toward no, Heat making a move for him. But you never know. Maybe they try to get a little earlier than later. I just don't think they'd give up on Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero either, especially because they wouldn't give up those guys for James Harden. But looking at Steve Kerr here, he got a little bit of hot waters, arguably. Made some comments on a podcast saying, quote, "That year was tough. There was a lot going on, some that you knew about and some that you don't. That was very difficult." He basically was asked about that his season, his 15 and 50 season last season was actually easier and more enjoyable than the year before when they lost to the Toronto Raptors, Kevin Durant's final year with the Warriors. Kerr, though, did clarify this up a little bit in a press conference saying, quote, "That is the furthest thing from the truth. To take that comment and put it in a tweet and send it out into the universe was so irresponsible and damaging. And I'm angry." And KD retweeted that original tweet I just said, or original quote, and said, "This is hilarious," because, God forbid Kevin Durant didn't respond to something on Twitter. So what's your thoughts on this, Matt? Do you think this is blown out of proportion? Again, try giving both sides of the story here because ball a while. We don't want to push any agenda. We're going to try to remain as objective as possible.
Yeah, I think Kerr's response makes me think maybe Katie saying this is hilarious wasn't necessarily a diss at Kerr, but more of a this is so false and it's hilarious that you would even claim he said something like that to the reporter.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that Kevin Durant honestly has a whole lot of bad blood there. You always hear that when you win a championship, in this case, 2 championships with an organization, with a team, a group of guys, that it brings them close together. I think Kevin Durant did what he thought was best for his career moving forward. And obviously it hurt the Warriors, but it's not like he didn't go there and didn't deliver on his promise. He did win multiple championships, was absolutely phenomenal in the playoffs, multiple finals MVPs. So he did his due diligence. And I think Steve Kerr, I think it was taken a bit out of context, if I'm being honest.
Absolutely. It was probably a Twitter grab, was probably clickbait, people trying to get attention about something that Steve Kerr said. And Steve Kerr is one of the most down-to-earth coaches in the league. I wouldn't think he would call out Kevin Durant like that.
No, this doesn't make sense. It really do be like that sometimes, Matt. But shout out to the San Antonio Spurs players. I thought this was kind of a bit of a cool tribute. They were wearing some of the top women's hoopers of all time, rocking their jerseys. Now, Becky Hammon, now she's a assistant coach on the San Antonio Spurs, actually, but DeJounte Murray was wearing her Colorado State jersey. Yeah, they were deep in his bag for that one. Then you had DeMar DeRozan, of course, went to USC himself, rocking a Cheryl Miller jersey, who's actually Reggie Miller's sister, and she was a phenomenal hooper. People thought she could have been one of the greatest of all time, was an absolute problem in high school and at USC, rocking her jersey. And Rebecca Lobo as well, a really good basketball player coming out of UConn. Rudy Gay rocked her jersey, and he also went to UConn as well. So there's a Husky connection there. Again, got to respect them for trying to push the agenda here. We've obviously heard, about what the NCAA did with the women's team and how their weight rooms and stuff like that weren't really up to par with the men's. Again, I don't understand why there's weight rooms in general, but the fact that they were unequal is not great. Unfortunately, it's just kind of how it is when it comes to men's and women's sports. But I'm glad to see guys on the San Antonio Spurs and Spurs who have hired women, really be able to kind of mend the bridge here and try to set a good example.
Man, DeJounte Murray rocking a Becky Hammon jersey is pretty cool. All those women, though, that you listed were certified buckets. I remember watching the Reggie Miller versus the Knicks 30 for 30, and they talked a lot about, or not a lot, but a bit about Sharon Miller, who is obviously Reggie's sister, as you mentioned. And Reggie told a story about the first time he scored 40 in high school, and he was like bragging about it, like, "Oh, sis, I got 40 points," only for Cheryl to tell him that she had scored 100 in that same night. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, Sharon Miller unfortunately had a really serious knee injury that kind of derailed her playing career, but people thought she could have been like maybe the greatest women's basketball player we've ever seen. She was really, really talented. But, of course, we don't want to leave the ladies behind here because on Ball Don't Lie, our motto is, Matt, drink your water.
Sorry. No team left behind and nobody left behind.
Nobody left behind. Yes, sir. That's why we're going to go to our players of the week here. I definitely don't leave anyone behind on this list. On that, I'll let you go first. Who made the list?
Well, so I'm going to do the college edition with the first weekend of the tournament this past weekend. So I'm going to go with some college players here, mix it up a little bit. I'm going to start with Max Abmas from Oral Roberts. I mentioned him last week, Hunter, when talking about their matchup with Ohio State. I said Oral Roberts could have the best player on the floor in that game with their point guard, Max Abmas. Thanks for proving me right, even though I thought they'd lose. Abmas led the country in scoring through the regular season with 24.6 points per game and carried that over to the big dance in a big way. Abmas had 29 on Friday in their shocking win over Ohio State and followed it up with 26 points in their second-round win over Florida. He might be the best scorer in this tournament. At this point, his team is thinking, why not us? They could definitely beat Arkansas this weekend, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Oral Roberts, it's not like this team lucked out a bit. Like, they played two very good teams and beat them pretty well. So shout out Oral Roberts. They are quite literally shocking the entire world. And like you said, it's March. Survive in advance, like I always say. And a lot of people say, I'm not the only one who made that up. But, Oral Roberts and Abmas are definitely really giving it to a lot of these teams right now and proving the doubters wrong. Next on my list is going to be a pretty obvious name. Jeff Teague of the Boston Celtics had 26 and 6 on 10 of 12 shooting, starting in Kemba Walker's place. Now, we know Kemba's been hurt all season. Has really been kind of dealing with a lot of knee issues. So having a quality backup point guard in Jeff Teague, a guy who's been an all-star before in this league, has been a starter for a very long period of time. The Celtics have been playing a little bit better recently, and I think that their bench, and especially since they don't have a whole lot of height, a whole lot of size on that team, they really need to rely on their guards. So being able to have Jeff Teague in there definitely helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the signing of Jeff Teague with the offseason was kind of criticized a little bit, but I think it was a good fit for the Celtics, absolutely, because they definitely needed a backup presence, a veteran presence behind Kevin Walker, especially with his injury issues, as you said earlier in the year. The Celtics right now, they're kind of free falling. I kind of like it. They're below 500 still, which is awesome. They're the 8th seed. They have the same record as the New York Knicks, or half a game behind them, which, if you had told me that before the season, is crazy. Jeff Teague's been balling out, though. Good signing for the Celtics for the offseason, but they still stink.
Yeah, Jeff Teague, also fairly similar game to Kemba Walker, just not as good. So it's good to have that same, aspect coming off the bench or, replacing Kemba Walker if need be. Now, Jeff Teague played at Wake Forest. They are not in the tournament, so I'm expecting the next player on your list is not from Wake Forest.
Absolutely not. It is Buddy Boeheim from the Syracuse Orange. I mean, this dude's been going absolutely nuts in this tournament. Every March, it seems as though Syracuse's zone defense kills other teams, but Buddy Boeheim has been the big story for this edition of the Orange Men. He lit up San Diego State on Friday, hitting 7 threes and scoring 30 points in their blowout win over San Diego State. Then in the second round, he cashed 6 threes and scored 25 points in the 3-point win over West Virginia. If he keeps this up, I think they have a better than good shot at taking down Houston this weekend in the Sweet 16.
Syracuse has played really well, a team that I was very wrong on entering this tournament. Oops. They seem like they play really well when no one expects them to. And so I guess I should have maybe questioned myself when I had them losing in the first round to San Diego State. Oh, well. But Buddy Boeheim, if it's not been, Oral Roberts, Syracuse has been, a big storyline in this tournament as well. Buddy Boeheim is playing as well as anybody. And it's crazy to think this dude's literally younger than the both of us, Matt. And he's out there getting buckets, being one of the best players in this tournament. Obviously, like you, I think, said, he is Jim Boeheim's son, the head coach of Syracuse. Crazy to think that that's a pretty big age difference, but that's okay. Not judging anyone. But yeah, Buddy Boeheim's been great. Syracuse has been great. That zone's been causing a lot of issues. And I'm curious to see if Houston can figure it out.
Yeah, because Houston's been pretty less than impressive in this tournament so far, so I think Syracuse will have a good shot against them. But Hunter, who is the next player on your list?
For me, it's going to be Evan Fournier of the Orlando Magic. I think he's playing really well because he does not want to be there and hopes that maybe playing well can help get him out of Orlando. Averaging over 25 points per game, little over 5 assists and 2 rebounds, shooting 46% from the field, shooting 55.6% from 3. So one of our guys shooting better from 3 than he is from inside the arc, and then 82% at the line. Playing some great basketball recently, Matt. Definitely sounds like he wants to be somewhere else.
Yeah, the Orlando Magic, man, they're just a tough place to get out of because for whatever reason, Orlando holds on to everybody worthy of value because they have no idea how to get rid of their players or make trades. But Evan Fournier, he definitely wants to get out of there. I think everybody on the Magic team wants to get out of there right now. That's back-to-back weeks you've listed a Magic guard on your players of the week. So shout out to you, Hunter.
And was it like Terrence Ross last week or something?
Yeah.
No, I think if I hype them up, maybe that'll help their trade value just for their own sake. They've been stuck there for quite some time, and they can go play somewhere else. But Matt, who rounds out the list for you here?
So my final player on my list is Cameron Krutwig for Loyola Chicago. He absolutely dominated his matchup with one of the best big men in the country, Kofi Coburn. He took the college basketball world by storm because of his appearance that makes him look like he works the night shift at a 24-hour Wendy's. But his play proved that he was far from someone like that. He put up 19 and 12 against a guy that was quite honestly more physically gifted than he was. But Krutwig dominated him with his sound fundamentals on both ends of the court. What's worth mentioning about Krutwig, too, is that he not only played for the 2018 Loyola team that made the Final Four, he started for them as a true freshman. He's been here before. This isn't new to him. He's not fazed by this at all.
Yeah, he definitely destroyed our brackets, Matt. That's for sure. Our brackets aren't looking very good right now. But yeah, Cameron Krutwig, like you said, was on that team when they went to the Final Four. And honestly, they might make it again based on looking at who they have
that
ahead
region.
of them.
Yep.
I don't think it's crazy to think that Loyola Chicago could be in the Final Four again.
Absolutely not. That region is kind of soft like butter right now, especially with Illinois out of there. I think Loyola Chicago might be the favorite in that region.
Yeah, I think he might be too, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Next on my list to round it out, it's going to be Darius Garland for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He never had a chance to play in the tournament. He was out for the year at Vanderbilt. He only played like 5 games, and yet still was a top 5 pick. But anyways, though, he's actually played very well recently for Cleveland, averaging over 20 points per game, 5 assists, and 2 rebounds per game. You know what? Those stats I read before, Matt, were actually Darius Garland's stats, not Evan Fournier's. I think I read the shooting numbers wrong. I think that was it. But Darius Garland hitting more threes than he's hitting field goals, apparently, or at least at a higher percentage. So that's cool. Evan Fournier actually shooting 49% from the field, 43% from 3. Still very good numbers, though. But Darius Garland really coming into his own. I actually kind of like him better than I like Colin Sexton, if I'm being honest, long term.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm really not a Colin Sexton fan. I've made that clear. I know he's made me eat my words a little bit, but I think Darius Garland, his ability to create off the dribble and shoot, and he has definitely shown some playmaking ability, which was kind of my question with him entering the draft, if he can really make others around him better. But he's definitely reading NBA defenses a lot better and learning how to make plays happen off the bounce. Darius Garland's a really talented player. He's stuck in probably one of the least notable places in Cleveland, but I think that he's going to continue to get better and be a nice building block for this Cavs team.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly going to get his opportunity with the Cavs, with them being so bad, really free falling since the start of the season when they were playing really well. It's his fit with Colin Sexton is kind of interesting.
It's a weird one.
They're both pretty similar players, so I think maybe the Cavs will have to choose between one of them down the line. But he has been playing well. The old Desmond Bane numbers, shooting better from three than he is from the field. Always love that. Love the 3-point snipers. Hopefully he continues to get his chance out there in Cleveland.
Yeah, and obviously Cleveland might be one of the teams that potentially will be busy at the deadline. They got a couple guys, either they'll buy out or a couple guys that they might end up trading. We'll see, but that's going to transition into the NBA trade deadline preview that we're going to have here. It's going to be at 3 p.m. on March 27th, so I'm sure something's going to break like it always does after our podcast. We record it. It just always seems to be that way, Matt. But we'll try to keep you updated if we get any Woj bombs or Shams bombs or do they call them Shams bombs? I don't really know if there's a
It doesn't roll off the tongue as well as a Woj
but I just
bomb
don't know
does.
what else. Shams alert. I don't know. Someone
Not the
else
same.
can think of a better name for me. But probably the biggest trade that happened right now, Matt, is the PJ Tucker deal. They sent him to Milwaukee, like he said, did not want to be in Houston. Now he's with a championship contending team. What do you think about this move for the Bucks? Does it put him over the top? Like, how much better do they get with this trade?
Well, Hunter, in his first 2 games with the Bucks, he has scored the same amount of points for them as you and I have, and that's a big old nothing. But with that being said, I think it's a good acquisition for the Bucks, and I don't think it'll truly show its worth until the postseason. I think he's still got to get acclimated there to that rotation in Milwaukee. I don't think he's going to start, so he's got to get used to coming off the bench again for Milwaukee. So he'll figure out his role eventually, and I think it'll pay dividends in the postseason.
Well, something I said about PJ Tucker on my last segment that we did an NBA trade deadline preview segment, also on Penn State Sports Night, is that I feel like PJ Tucker, his value does not always show up in the stat sheet. He's a great leader. He dives for loose balls. He takes charges. He's not afraid out there. He's tough, great teammate, stands up for his teammates. Defensively, he can guard just about any position, was even asked to play center for the Houston Rockets last season. And he has defensive versatility as well, can guard on the perimeter, can also guard on the post. So I think that toughness and leadership and grit, the Bucks definitely needed. It was a great acquisition. They didn't have to give up a whole lot to get him either, which is good. Do I think this move puts him over the top? No, I do not. I do not think it does. I still think the Nets are the favorite, followed by the Sixers. And I even kind of like the Miami Heat a little more too. I know it's a little bit more bold. I think the Bucks will finish. I wouldn't be shocked if the Bucks, honestly, looking at the situations with the Nets and Sixers with their injuries, I wouldn't be shocked if they finished first in the East. But again, like, you got to show up in the playoffs. This is on Giannis. This is on Drew Holiday. It's on Chris Middleton. Mike Budenholzer, who we've talked about, he's got to show up too. So I think that for the Bucks, this is a great get for them. Good for them. This is the right move. But I need to see it in the playoffs. I don't want to hear any more excuses from this team.
Yeah, for the Bucks, I mean, it feels like since the offseason they just made nothing but the right move. They got Drew Holiday. They got rid of some guys that they needed to shed some contracts that were older. They've made the right moves. And at the end of the day, I just don't think it's going to matter because the Brooklyn Nets and Sixers are just so far above everybody else, it seems.
It really does. But yeah, you never know. Maybe PJ Tucker could make him over the top. I think Giannis is really the key here. He's got to show up in the playoffs along with some of those other star players. But something else I thought a little bit interesting, talking about a Midwest team, the Indiana Pacers are apparently taking calls for not only Malcolm Brogdon, but also Domantas Sabonis. Matt, how much do you believe in this? Do you think these guys do actually get traded? Do you think that the Pacers are really looking to get off them?
Well, if I had a BS meter for the Domantas Sabonis trade rumors, I'd put the BS meter all the way to the top. These are high BS rumors. I don't think they're going to trade him. That'd be ridiculous. I don't think that. First of all, I think they'd be asking for too much for him. I don't think a team would be willing to give up a lot for Domantas Sabonis. And as for Malcolm Brogdon, I kind of believe it, but again, like I said, the BS meter on that is also pretty high. I think he would fit well for the Clippers. I think it's his best fit, but he would also be a good fit as well. I just don't know what either of those teams would be willing to give up in order to get him.
Yeah, Malcolm Brogdon actually having a very good year, and he's a bit injury prone too, Matt. So you gotta know what you're getting when you get Malcolm Brogdon. Personally, if I was the Pacers, I don't understand why trading any of these guys makes complete sense unless they get like some crazy offer that they can't refuse. These are Sabonis is an all-star. Malcolm Brogdon is like a borderline all-star, and they got Karis LeVert there too. T.J. Warren has been hurt all year. I think when this team's healthy, they're a pretty good team. Unfortunately, that they have not been healthy. They have been struggling mightily since the start of the season. They have not been able to get their feet, back up. And this is a team that might even miss out on the play-in tournament, yet alone the playoffs. So maybe that's why they're trying to make a trade. But I also think that this is a very good team, a team that's not contending for a championship. I get it. I just don't understand what making these moves would do for them.
Yeah, I think they just kind of want to. They're kind of realizing they don't want to be in mediocrity, but they're realizing it at the wrong time. In the middle of the season, you realize this team is not that good when it's got a lot of players that have had injuries, especially when the coaching is not all that great either. Realize maybe it's not Nate McMillan's fault. So, yeah, I think it's just a case for the Pacers of them realizing too late what they are.
Yeah, I do think this is smoke, though. I don't see this actually happening. Either of those guys getting moved. But keeping it in the Central Division here for the Chicago Bulls, Lauri Markkanen did not sign a contract extension entering this season, which means he will be up as a restricted free agent. Kind of like I just talked about Malcolm Brogdon, Lauri Markkanen, talented player, but he also typically gets hurt. A lot of teams are interested in him. But do you think the Bulls actually pull the trigger?
I think they could, and I think they kind of should. He's not, as you said, he's been injury prone for them. He hasn't really done much to send waves to that Bulls organization to impress them. Obviously, not signing that extension, I don't think they would match an offer sheet over the offseason for him because I think he's a player that could get a lot of money, probably be overpaid. So I don't think the Bulls should match that. So with that being said, I think the Bulls would be pretty inclined to trade him. I think the Mavs would be a great fit for Markkanen. They need a big wing that can score from any point on the floor. Also, he has the obvious culture fit there, being a white European, so he'd fit seamlessly. Phoenix would also make a lot of sense because they're really thin at the power forward position. They could sign him in there. And then maybe the Pacers, too, if they want to try and retool and still make a run at the postseason. We just talked about them being hurt. But maybe they try to buy the deadline instead of sell.
Yeah, perhaps. Maybe they do. They shock everyone a little bit. The Mavs fit's interesting because they do love their big men who like to shoot threes a lot. And he fits that description pretty well. I'll take it from that perspective, Matt. But and he is kind of similar-ish play style-wise to Porzingis, just not as good. Like lengthy 7-footer who's not, really like a down in the post big man, but kind of plays a little more on the perimeter. Maybe. Suns make a little more sense to me just because they could use a stretch 4 like that. Dario Saric has not been great for them this year. Jay Crowder's a good player, but not the same player as Markkanen. So maybe they could use some offensive firepower. Second in the Western Conference too. So they could be looking to make some moves there. But yeah, I think if I was the Bulls, I would trade him. I don't want to give this guy $15 to $20 million a year. I don't think it'd be worth it. But if another team does, great. Get something for him before you don't get anything for him, I guess.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that because, like you said, he's just too injury prone. I wouldn't be able to shell out that kind of money for him.
No, I wouldn't. But Kyle Lowry, apparently, he's kind of maybe the biggest name who could be traded. There's been rumors saying that he's not going to get traded at the deadline, but apparently he wants to go to Miami, and whether that's via trade this season or signing with him next offseason. He did sell his house, so there is that. So there's definitely a chance that he could be on the move, not leaving Toronto. What would you do if you were the Raptors here?
But Hunter, he's from North Philly, and he wears the Phillies hat sometimes. He's totally a fit for Philly, Hunter. But in all seriousness, though, if he goes to the Heat, it would have to be a deal centered around Tyler Hero because I heard that's what they want. Is Miami ready to give up on Hero already? I'm not sure. I know he's had a tough year, but he's still so young, and Lowry is so not young. And plus, he's a free agent after the season. They could just sign him in free agency, like you said, like we talked about with Oladipo earlier. But the Sixers, and here I'll give you a Sixers pitch here, Hunter, and why it might be more realistic and not only make more sense for the Sixers, but be more realistic for the Sixers. The Raptors want two of Danny Green, Seth Curry, and Tyrese Maxey. If you're the Sixers, I think you easily give up Danny Green because he's the most inconsistent player I've ever seen in my entire life. And I think you give up Maxey too because he barely plays as it is, but he's still a solid and talented young player. He just needs more of a chance. And I think he'd get that with Toronto. And I don't think he's going to get that here in Philly because he's stuck on a bench that's pretty deep. The Sixers keep their depth with guys on the bench like Milton, Korkmaz, and Tybal, and shooting with Seth Curry, and now you add Kyle Lowry to that mix. I'm talking myself into it, Hunter. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think there has been debates amongst Philly fans if you would give up that for Lowry. I would. Personally, Tyrese Maxey, I like him, but like Kyle Lowry is, I don't think he'll ever be as good as Kyle Lowry. I'm just going to be honest. And Kyle Lowry's still a really good basketball player and would definitely be a great upgrade for that team. And if you trust Matisse Thybulle, who defensively probably becomes a little bit more of someone you need to play more and give more minutes to, then I think this trade makes sense. However, though, Matt, I feel like that might not be enough. I don't know if I accept that if I was Toronto personally. You're essentially just giving up Kyle Lowry for Tyrese Maxey, but I guess if he's going to leave, I don't know.
There'd be a pick in there too as well.
There'd be
a couple. Yeah.
Would you? I don't know. Would you give up a first-round pick for him?
Absolutely, because if you're the Sixers, a first round pick, especially this year, is not going to mean that much. With where you're going to finish in the standings, it's not going to mean a late first round pick is not going to mean that much. And Daryl Morey, dude, he's always wheeling the deal, and he'd get back into the first round if he wanted to.
Yeah, Daryl Morey and then Doc Rivers, when he was a GM, they were allergic to draft picks. They just seemed like they never wanted to use them at all and always traded them. So perhaps they are aggressive at the deadline. I think Kyle Lowry's a great fit, just like how Chris Paul was a great fit with Doc Rivers in the Clippers. So, yeah, I think this trade definitely does actually make a lot of sense, but we'll see if it actually happens. Speaking of guys that want to be traded, Aaron Gordon, he has made it publicly clear, even doubled down yesterday saying, I don't want to be here. Where do you think he's going to end up? I mean, I think the Magic are going to trade him. This guy clearly doesn't want to be there. And, I think there are enough suitors out there, but where do you possibly see Aaron Gordon fitting?
Well, I think you're right, Hunter. I think this is the final nail in the coffin for him. He's just made it abundantly clear he wants to get out. If he stays there past the trade deadline, it's just going to be cancerous. They're going to have to buy him out or something. Unfortunately, I think that his best fit is with the Boston Celtics, who are more desperate for a big man than just about any other team in the league. They're so guard heavy and just have so little talent at the power forward and center positions. I think he'd fit great there. Phoenix also makes so much sense. He'd be a good pair next to Ayton for the same reason we listed about Markkanen, and he has more bounce than Markkanen, obviously. He's not the same scorer, but he's got some good bounce, plays some decent defense. And I think the Nuggets, Warriors, and Blazers also all make sense, but we'll see how much they have or how much they want to give up.
Yeah, Denver, I definitely said could use some big man depth there. I said that on segment. I think Suns definitely make a lot of sense. They could use a 4-man. They had that Arizona front court with Gordon and Ayton there. Celtics, like we said, they need size. Aaron Gordon, too, actually, I think averaging, if it's not a career high, it's really close to career high in assists, and he's shooting over 40% from three. So he has definitely made some improvements in his game. Not a star player, but a pretty solid one. That could definitely be a good rotation player for a team either trying to make the playoffs or trying to make a run in the playoffs.
Absolutely. But the thing for Aaron Gordon to go to the Celtics is he would still be able to wear 00 because Tatum just wears 10.
That's true.
Sabermetrics, baby.
Yep, that's very important. Very important to note. Now, looking at Harrison Barnes of the Sacramento Kings, he could be on the move. And I think a lot of those same teams we just mentioned would be interested in him as well because him and Aaron Gordon are kind of like that stretch 4. Could also play the 3 a little bit too. But apparently it might take multiple first-round picks to do it. What?
Dude, if you're a championship contender, you could obviously use Harrison Barnes. But for multiple picks, come on, man. Keep the line moving. There's all the players we just listed are better than Harrison Barnes, and you're not going to give up multiple picks for them. Maybe Kyle Lowry would be the one you get multiple picks for, but no. Harrison Barnes, no.
Yeah. I was like, ew, no. Kings, wait, I don't know. I guess start high and meet somewhere in the middle. I don't really know about that one, but we did talk about the Raptors maybe making some moves. One move that might be a little bit easier for him to make, and I heard that, quote, 75% chance he does get moved, and that's Norman Powell. Very underrated player who comes off the bench for them. A big reason that they were able to win a championship. Norman Powell, I think, if it a lot of places. A lot of teams are interested, such as the Knicks, the Cavs, the Celtics, the Mavs, the Pistons, the Hawks, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Also could hear the Nets could do a Spencer Dinwiddie for Norman Powell swap. Do you think he's as good as gone?
I think he is, especially with only making $11 million this year. He's so cheap. He's a great option for any playoff team coming off the bench. And I think that Nets deal just makes too much sense, man. Giving up Dinwiddie, who the Nets are trying to get rid of, and the Raptors could take on a player that could potentially accept his player option in the offseason. Obviously, he's not going to play the rest of this season with his injury. So I think that swap makes a lot of sense for both sides. Obviously, the Knicks, Hawks, and Mavs are also great fits, I think. Boston, I think, has too much guard depth. I think they should focus on getting a big man before they focus on getting a guard. Same thing with the Cavs. They just seem like they have too much talent too much young talent at the guard position. They really have no need for him there. Detroit, what are you doing? You don't need anything. You're trying to tank. And Minnesota, same thing. It doesn't make sense for them. But I think the playoff teams, if you're a playoff contending team, I think he'd be a great addition for that team.
I think so too. I think Norman Powell's a very underrated player and could definitely be a big improvement for anybody. If the Raptors are really not looking to win games, I think taking Spencer Dinwiddie makes sense. They've shown that they can have multiple guards in the same backcourt and still be successful. Whether Kyle Lowry's there or not is yet to be seen. So he's either the replacement for Lowry, or you kind of have a 3-guard rotation with him, Lowry, Fred VanVleet there.
I think he's the replacement for Lowry because I think Lowry ends up getting moved. I really think he does. So I think Dinwiddie ends up being a replacement for Lowry, which I think is a good replacement in my opinion.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry would definitely probably be the biggest player to get moved at the deadline if it does happen. Still checking my phone to see because you never know. Maybe there's something breaks or what have you. But let's talk about Spencer Dinwiddie a bit because he's in an interesting spot. He's a very good player, but does have a player option entering this offseason. He can opt in and take the cash, or he can opt out and look to go somewhere else. The Brooklyn Nets at this point don't really need him anymore. They kind of have the best backcourt in the NBA now. So and some other really good scores. So Spencer Dinwiddie, unfortunately, doesn't really fit the timeline of the Nets anymore, but a place that he was able to kind of revamp his career and jump-start it after playing it with the Pistons coming out of Colorado. But some handful of teams could actually be the Pistons, the Houston Rockets, the Indiana Pacers, and the Chicago Bulls, all teams that either are definitely not making the playoffs or they're teetering the playoff line. So it does make sense to maybe make this move because you'll have him next season and you can afford to give up an asset for him, knowing that you're probably not going to win a whole lot of games.
Absolutely. I think the teams that are out of it, like you said, are pretty much out of it, being in the play-in tournament kind of situation. They're probably going to be out of it very early. I think they make the most sense for Spencer Dinwiddie because they don't need him to play this season. And he could potentially opt into a contract for next season, like you said, that player option. I still think he might decline his player option and become a free agent. But the fact that a team, would trade for him would probably garner more interest on Dinwiddie's end because he said, "Oh, they traded for me. They obviously want me here." So that could help him work out a deal even if he declines a player option.
Yeah, it's hard to really gauge this because I don't know if Dinwiddie's someone who wants to play for a contender and is willing to take less money, or he's someone that's looking to secure the bag. I have no idea. So that's very interesting with him. Out of those teams I listed, I like the Bulls fit the most. I feel
Absolutely.
like having another guard there, Kobe White and Zach LaVine, takes the pressure off them, but makes this team even more dynamic. Spencer Dinwiddie has shown he can play on and off the ball and be a respectable playmaker and spot-up shooter and scorer, gets to the basket. I like that fit a lot with the Bulls. I would make that move if I was them.
I totally agree. I was going to say Chicago is easily the best fit there. Indiana doesn't really make sense to me either. They have a lot of talent at the guard position as well. When all their guys from injury come back, I think they have too much talent there. It'd be Dinwiddie and LeVert again, which would be an interesting fit. But Detroit and Houston, I think if he was in that situation, I think I think he doesn't really fit there. I think he would decline a player option from both those teams just because he knows their situation, knows how bad they are. I don't think he want to stay there.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. But another guard who is playing right now, and I think could be a very good piece to any sort of contending team, and that's what the LA teams and at least Philadelphia has thought that way based on the reports. And that is George Hill. he is stuck with the Oklahoma City Thunder, basically the Bermuda Triangle of the NBA right now, a team that is so trying not to win, but still has these good players. I think George Hill could make a lot of sense for so many teams in the league. Do you agree with that?
I think so too. I think he'd fit great, so great on the Sixers. Hoping that the Thunder buy him out, so the Sixers don't need to trade anything for him. I think he'd be a great fit there. Obviously, the LA teams could use him. The Clippers are desperate for point guard talent. Literally anybody, they'll take anybody. And for the Lakers, obviously anybody wants to play with LeBron. George Hill's already played with LeBron. Does he want to do that again? I don't know. I think I'd rather play with Joel Embiid. But I'm just saying, I'm just joking. But or am I? But I think if you're George Hill, obviously you just want to get out of Oklahoma City. That's the main goal.
Yeah, George Hill, he has become a really good spot up shooter. He's a very good defensive player. He knows his role. He's not going to try to outdo himself. A lot of playoff experience. I think a lot of teams are going to want him. I think the Thunder would be foolish not to trade George Hill at the trade deadline. And of course, we talked about the Lakers. They might be struggling a little bit with no LeBron Anthony Davis for a while. Apparently, guys like KCP could be dealt. Taylor Horn-Tucker is also gauging a lot of interest from teams as well. What do you think about the Lakers? Should they try to be aggressive here? They weren't that aggressive at the deadline last year, and it paid dividends. Are they a team that's maybe more on the buyout market? How do you see the Lakers kind of playing this deadline or the next week or so in the league?
Well, I think they'll always be active on the buyout market. Any LeBron team is going to be active on the buyout market. I think they're more desperate now, though, at the trade deadline because of LeBron and AD's absence at the same exact time. You saw last night this team was going to struggle without both of them. So I think they need maybe even like a small addition, but they need to make a move, I think.
Yeah, they definitely, I think, might have to. KCP might make the most sense in terms of trading just because he's not been great for them. Although he did play really well in the playoffs, and maybe they're going to bank on that again. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I think they're a very deep team, and they can afford to trade a guy or two. I guess the question is for what? If it's like a George Hill, I think that makes a lot of sense. He can be the kind of like the backup PG behind Dennis Schroeder there, and that's a pretty good compliment. But we'll see. I am very curious to see. Like you said, the Lakers are always very active on the buyout market, getting a guy like Markieff Morris last year who ended up playing really well for the Lakers and earned a second contract with them. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens more or less. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how the Lakers play this one.
Mm-hmm. And they could even be in the market for Andre Drummond as well. Don't sleep on that. Andre Drummond could go anywhere though. Who knows?
Yeah, I think Andre Drummond will be someone on the buyout market, and I think we'll probably highlight the buyout market a little bit more next week just because we'll know who already got traded and what have you, and who's going to be on the buyout market. But it is tourney season, of course, and here on Ball Online, we do like talking some college hoops, so we're going to do it. A really interesting first weekend, Matt, of games. A whole lot of upsets. We were very confident in our brackets, and both of us have looked quite stupid because of that. 3 of our 4 final 4 teams, including our champion, are out. But what are some of the biggest shocks and biggest takeaways from this first weekend?
Well, the main takeaway has got to be the tournament gods are really making up for the fact that we got no madness last year by packing 2 years worth of upsets into this tournament. Obviously, we have so many double-digit seeds in the Sweet 16. We've got a lot of upsets. We've had a lot of top teams being taken down early. Illinois out early, Ohio State out early. That was a shock. Texas losing in the first round was a shock. And maybe the Big Ten is overrated and the Pac-12 is clearly way underrated. Bill Walton's losing his mind right now trying to say he told us about the Pac-12. And my final takeaway is just the fact that Gonzaga and Baylor are so much better than the 14 other teams remaining in this tournament. That is your national championship game, in my opinion, is Gonzaga versus Baylor.
And honestly, I don't think their paths are all that hard either to get there, if I'm being honest. That's a tough one. I think the other places is going to be a little bit more of a bloodbath, could be up in the air. That one, not so much. Yeah, we saw a 1 seed go down, one who a lot of people thought could be the national champions. We saw 2 4 seeds go down. I think we both picked Ohio to win that one, so weren't shocked there. But seeing Purdue lose to North Texas, that one definitely shocked me a little bit more. A 2 seed going down and a 15 seed going all the way into the Sweet 16. I don't think we've seen that since Florida Gulf Coast did it, which we did talk about last week. So there's that. And a team that, I don't know, maybe they could give Arkansas some problems. We'll see. But we're going to give a bit of a Sweet 16 Elite 8 preview here now that we know the teams. So let's get right to it. Let's start off in the West. Gonzaga is going to be taking on Creighton, and then USC is going to be taking on Oregon in a Pac-12 clash, if you will. Who do you think is going to advance the Elite 8 here?
Well, Gonzaga is going to win by at least 20. Creighton is not that good. They're going to smoke them. USC Oregon, I think, will be a bloodbath, though. USC beat them by 14 in their only matchup earlier this season. But Oregon wasn't at full strength the way they are now in that game. And Evan Mobley for USC is really good. I think it's going to be a very, very close game, especially with the fact that they're both Pac-12 teams. I think it's going to be a great rivalry matchup. I think it's going to be a really even game.
Do you have a winner on that or no?
Right now I'm gonna lean towards USC because I think the Mobley brothers are just too good.
I am leaning toward that way too. I had them winning their first game against Drake, but I don't think I had them advancing further after that. I think that was Texas that was supposed to play them. I could be wrong.
3 seed in that conference was Kansas, and they beat.
That's right. They smoked Kansas. They won by like 30. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. I also think Kansas was kind of overrated this year anyway. But proceed.
Yeah. Pac-12 really showing out here in the tournament. This is 2021, man. I don't know. But I tend to agree with you. Creighton actually, I think, has looked very good in the tournament, but they're not beating Gonzaga. I think they can play their best game and still lose by 10, 15 points. I honestly think so. I think Gonzaga is head and heels better than every team in this tournament right now, maybe outside of Baylor. USC Oregon, that one really could go either way. I'm excited to watch that one. I'm leading right now towards USC, like you said, Matt. What will probably happen is that Creighton and Oregon will both win. They'll both be in the Elite 8, and we'll look stupid yet.
Yeah, obviously, because everything that we've said so far has been wrong.
Yep, exactly. Please don't listen to us. We don't know anything. But looking at the eastern side of the region here, the East region, this one a little bit more up for grabs. Michigan taking on Florida State. It was chalk there. And then Alabama versus UCLA. A lot of people thought Michigan State would be the team making it out of the play-in tournament. But nope, UCLA not only does that, they also advance to the Sweet 16 here. I think this one is a little bit more up for grabs. 3 of the top 4 seeds in that conference or in that region are still there. How do you think this one plays out?
Michigan-Florida State is a great matchup and feels like a classic football bowl game kind of matchup. I think this will be a really close game, but I think Florida State beats Michigan because I think Michigan is really going to start to miss Isaiah Livers in this game. Is that his name? Is his first name Isaiah? Yeah, I think they're really going to start to miss him in that game. They're still a good team without him, but I think they need that depth. I think they need Livers in that game. And UCLA is really hitting their stride at the right time. But with that being said, I think Bama routes USC. I think UCLA, I think they're really good. I think Bama is just a deep team right now. They're playing the best basketball they have all year. And I think we get a Bama-FSU matchup in the Elite 8 and what would be billed as this would also be a great football game in 2014 matchup.
It would be a great football game in 2014. The Michigan one's tough to call. I've not loved how they've looked in the tournament, to be honest. I thought LSU was going to beat them, and they did come back and win that game. But I feel a lot more confident in the way Florida State's played. So that's why I'm also going Seminoles. I'm definitely going Bama over UCLA, and I don't think it's going to be close. For the Elite 8, though, that one gets really tough. I'm really thinking of this on the spot right now, who I take. I am leaning, I think, Florida State, but I don't know how confident I feel in that.
I'll play devil's advocate with you, and I'll take Bama in that game. I think Bama, like I said, they're hitting the stride at the right time, and I think, everybody's so sick of seeing Alabama in football, so why not have them be good at basketball too? I think they're just shooting the lights out right now. I think they're a deep team. They've really improved on defense, which you gave them flack for a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to take them in that game, but obviously I think it's a toss-up. I think in terms of betting, I think that's maybe a 1-point line. I think it's a toss-up.
Yeah, Alabama definitely listening into the podcast just like everybody else does, clearly, because everyone just surprisingly plays better after we call them out here on Ball Don't Lie. I'm just saying. Someone is FaceTime me. That's a respectful decline. Anyways, though, actually just got a bit of an update. Not a huge Woj bomb, but members of the Lakers organization are expected to receive COVID-19 vaccines this week. This is reported by Dave McMenamin, Ramona Shelburne, and Woj as well. So, Matt, I guess off the top here, not to put you on the spot, do you think that the NBA is going to keep giving out COVID-19 vaccines and stuff like that? Do you think it's going to be mandated at some point? I mean, what's your thoughts?
I think they will, and I think they should, and I think eventually it will be mandated. I don't think it will be this season. I think probably the start of next season it will be mandated. You've seen the Blazers. I think I've seen Robert Covington get vaccinated. I think the rest of the team is getting vaccinated as well. So I think it's a good start to get the athletes vaccinated because the NBA just can't, and other sports just can't afford to have any more COVID pauses. They've already lost a lot of money, so I think it's worth it, definitely worth it for these players to get vaccinated and the front office as well.
Yeah, the saying about it is, wait your turn. So if it's their turn, great. Yeah, we're curious to see how that all plays out. Hopefully this pandemic ends sooner than we think. But looking at the South region here, like we said, Baylor might be the runaway favorites. They're going to be taking on Villanova, who I'll be honest has definitely shocked me a little bit in this tournament. I'm not going to lie. And then you got Arkansas playing Oral Roberts. I mean, I think I have a good idea how this one's going to play out. But I don't know, Matt. Do you think there might be an upset in here?
The Baylor-Nova matchup, that's going to be a bloodbath. I think Baylor destroys them. Villanova's a nice story. I didn't think they would win a game in this tournament, especially without their two leading scorers, or two of their three leading scorers. But they've played really well. They played great team defense. They played the Jay right way. But look, quite honestly, they haven't played two pretty weak teams in Winthrop and North Texas, and Baylor is light years ahead of both of those teams. So I think Baylor wins by double digits easily, and that's putting it lightly. Arkansas escaped the win against Texas Tech. I didn't know if they deserved to win that game or not, but Justin Smith for them has been balling out for that team in that tournament. Oral Roberts, again, might have the best player on the floor in this game yet again. Oral Roberts could run out of gas in this game, but I think it's more likely that they at least keep it close and maybe even pull off another upset. Worth noting that both of their victories have been narrow, and for that reason, I think they've run out of gas. I think Arkansas wins this one, and then I think Baylor smokes Arkansas in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I can't see Oral Roberts pulling this one off. I think I give them so much credit for what they did in destroying my bracket, but in all honesty, but I will say for Arkansas, a team that I do think is a very good team, to have 4 days to prepare for this game. I just don't see it. Arkansas is a very good team, a team that beat Texas Tech. They've actually looked very good in the tournament. I think that Baylor Arkansas game can be a little closer than I think you think. But I do think Baylor is going to ultimately come out of the Final Four here, and we'll see a Baylor Gonzaga championship, like I guess the people really wanted all along. And so obviously, and I think Baylor is going to beat Villanova too. But looking at the Midwest, this is an interesting one, Matt. We got 8 seed, a 12 seed, an 11 seed, and a 2 seed. This is probably the most wacky one. Loyola Chicago taking on Oregon State, and Syracuse versus Houston. Some of the hottest teams, some of the biggest stories are all in this Midwest region. How do you see it playing out?
Well, it's funny, Hunter. You get the 8, the 12, and the 11, and then one of the most questionable 2 seeds of recent years. So, a 2 seed that's honestly not that great. So, and hasn't looked great in the tournament either. So, starting with Loyola Chicago and Oregon State, it's a match of Cinderellas. However, I think Loyola looked like the 1 seed when they took down top seeded Illinois. Oregon State is the hottest team in this tournament, trying to pull their best 2011 UConn impersonation. Although, ultimately, I think Loyola Chicago is the favorite to get to Final Four in this region. I think they win. And then in the Houston, I think that game could go any which way. Would not be surprised if a blowout happened on either side. Both teams have the talent to do that, and the unpredictability to do that as well. But I could also see this being a really back and forth game. Houston honestly has not played to their potential in this tournament. They have not played their best. And for that reason, I'm picking the Syracuse Bayheims of Jim and Buddy. I think they're going to win. I think we're going to get an 8-11 matchup in the Elite Eight. And then I think I'm going to take Loyola Chicago over Syracuse, and what I think is going to be a very ugly, low-scoring defensive game with a lot of fundamentals and a lot of white guys driving to the basket. But I think Loyola Chicago is going to get to the Final Four for the second time in 4 years.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Loyola is going to make it out. I do think Houston will beat Syracuse, though. That's the only thing I'll disagree with you on. I think they have what it takes to plus that one up a little bit. We are thinking very similarly, Matt, and I feel like this is not how it's going to play out. I think it's going to be the complete opposite, probably. I don't even know if we're even qualified to speak on this topic anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only one we had different in this one was because the Bama Florida State game, and that's only because I wanted to play devil's advocate.
That one I could go
Yeah.
either way.
And honestly, it doesn't even matter who gets to the Final Four in that region because they're going to get smoked by Gonzaga either way. So Gonzaga, Baylor in the national championship, we both agree on that. And in the national championship, I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to stick with Gonzaga.
Yeah, that's who I also had in my national championship, and I think they are the best team left in the tournament. So I will agree with you on that and be wrong with you on that. Anyways, though, shifting back to the NBA, since it is trade deadline season, why not go down memory lane a little bit and give our all NBA trade deadline deals teams? We're going to be given some of those biggest, some of our favorite deals throughout the course of the NBA that happened right at the deadline or damn near close to it. Matt, which deal is first on your list?
So I'm going to go with the Lakers acquiring Pau Gasol in 2008, also known as the Kwame Brown deal. My favorite part about this trade is the classic rant we got from Stephen A. Smith. The host asked Stephen A. if he thought the Lakers gave up too much for Gasol, to which Stephen A. responded with, "Is that a trick question? They gave up Kwame Brown. Who cares?" In all seriousness, though, the Lakers got – he's a bona fide scrub. He can't play. In all seriousness, though, the Lakers got the perfect star to pair with Kobe Bryant. Gasol, and while they lost in the finals that year to the Boston Celtics in 2008, Gasol was an instrumental part in the Lakers winning the 2009 and 2010 NBA Finals. The Lakers did not give up too much in that trade.
They did not, and that is why it is on my list as well. I had to shout out Pau Gasol there. Ironically, got traded for Marc Gasol, his brother, who then ended up being kind of one of the greatest Memphis Grizzly players of all time. So it kind of worked out for both teams, I guess. Both of them got what they wanted out of it. Marc Gasol younger than Pau Gasol. Marc Gasol is younger than LeBron.
Wow, he looks really old. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because LeBron puts color in his beard. But did Marc Gasol play for the Lakers, or was that a 3-team deal?
He never actually really played for them. He was drafted by the Lakers though, but never suited up a game for them. So yeah,
interesting.
That is pretty interesting when you look at it just like that. And that was on my list here. So I'll give a team though. This one might be on your list too, because I feel like this is probably the biggest deadline deal that at least I remember, and that's Carmelo Anthony going to the New York Knicks. 13 players and 3 teams involved in this one, including Wilson Chandler, Danilo Gallinari, Raymond Felton, Timothy Mozgov, first-round pick, 2 seconds, and even more than that. They basically gave up the kitchen sink for Melo. They did not win a championship. However, though, Melo was 26-year-old in the prime of his career. And I'll be honest, contrary to popular belief, I do think the Knicks did win this trade. I know they didn't get the end goal. I do not think it was Melo's fault, though. He was phenomenal, an MVP caliber player for the Knicks. I think they did the right thing trying to get a superstar there. I just think the Knicks screwed up in the fact that they really couldn't build it much more around him.
I totally agree with you, Hunter. This was also on my list, so I'll speak on it a little bit. Like you said, people thought that they gave up too much in the deal, but again, that is quite frankly BS. They got a top 10 player in the prime of his career for 1 starter caliber player and role players. The problem with this deal wasn't the deal itself. It's what the Knicks and their stupid front office did to build around Carmelo Anthony after the deal. They picked up Chauncey Billups' team option, who was also included in that deal. He came over just to amnesty clause, drop him 6 months later for Tyson Chandler, which they arguably should have done for Amari Stoudemire at that time because he didn't really fit with Melo that well and he was making a lot of money. So in exchange for amnesty clausing, dropping Chauncey Billups 6 months after they decided to pick up his option, they got Tyson Chandler, which ended up being good for them, but they also got the corpse of Mike Bibby and the fumes of Baron Davis. So the Knicks made the playoffs in 2011, 2012, and 2013 with Carmelo, but won just 1 series during that time and didn't make the playoffs again after 2013. But again, as you said, Hunter, that's not Carmelo's fault. I think the deal itself was a win, but what they did after the deal is what made it seem worse than it was.
Yeah, and I think because of the Melo incident, that is why star players do not want to go to New York. If I'm being completely honest, they do not want to play under James Dolan in the slightest. Next up on your list, Matt, what deal was it for you?
I have DeMarcus Cousins to the Pelicans in 2017. Boogie got traded during the All-Star game and was told What'd you say? Is that 3 for
No, I
3?
was laughing because I know where you're going with this one.
Yeah. So he got traded during the All-Star game and was told about the trade during his post-game press conference. His infamous reaction when someone in a suit whispered the deal into his ear was, "Oh, really? That's whatever." The classic DeMarcus Cousins pissed off response. The Kings famously got absolutely nothing of value back in the deal other than exactly one good COVID-shortened season from Buddy Hield. They got New Orleans' 2017 first-round pick, which they used on Hold Your Nose Justin Jackson, the Sixers' second-round pick, the ghost of Kings past Tyreek Evans, and whatever was left of Langston Galloway. Meanwhile, Boogie was awesome for the Pelicans for the year and a half he played in NOLA until he tore his Achilles. He didn't earn an extension from the team and hasn't been the same player since.
It's a really interesting story how this all played out, to be honest with you. It seemed like you said, a highway robbery, and probably was for the New Orleans Pelicans. DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis, it was like bringing it back to the Tim Duncan, David Robinson days when they're two dominant big men who can do so many different things well, and it was really working well there. But unfortunately, due to injuries, and then of course Anthony Davis didn't want to play there much more either. We didn't really get to see the full potential of that. So that's definitely one of those like what could have been trades that happened at the deadline for sure.
Because it was the right move for the Pelicans. They didn't give up too much for him. It was a great move. They fit really well together. They were really good before Cousins got hurt. They were either the 4 or 5 seed in the West at that time before Cousins got hurt. Then he got hurt and then everything fell apart. But I think they were a good fit. They were obviously pretty good friends. I think Anthony Davis wore DeMarcus Cousins' All-Star game jersey in the All-Star game the year they played together. So I think it was just, like you said, a classic case of what could have been.
Yeah, the Pelicans did end up, going far in the playoffs too that year. They did sweep Portland, but maybe could have went, well, I want to say even further because they probably still would have lost to Golden State. But maybe they could have given them a tougher run for their money, perhaps. Next on my list, the trade itself wasn't bad until you realize how bad the trade actually was. So the Clippers traded their first-round pick, which was unprotected, Baron Davis's contract to get Mo Williams from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Do you know who that first-round pick ended up being? It had a 2.8% chance to win the lottery, and it won the lottery, and that player was Kyrie Irving, Matt.
Yeah, that was also on my list.
Was it?
Yeah, I thought I was gonna pull a rabbit out of the bag with that pick. I thought that was a good one. I thought I would have gotten you with that. But I just like reading the names in this deal. Mo Williams, Jamario Moon, what was left of Baron Davis, and you like if you're the Clippers, why would you not protect that pick? Like I don't
no protections on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's crazy. For some odd reason they included the first round pick in there, all for Mo Williams and Jamario Moon for Kyrie Irving. So obviously it worked out really well for the Cavs. I don't know, man. That first round pick, right after LeBron had left, it could have been a little bit of collusion. No, I'm just saying, it could have been a little bit of collusion to get the Cavs that number 1 pick.
Might have been, man. I don't know. I don't necessarily completely disagree with that. I'm not sure. I guess everything happens for a reason. Anyways, though, Matt, what else makes the list for you here?
So this will be my last one since you took that one. So we've mentioned all the ones on my list. So this will be my last one. Rasheed Wallace to the Pistons in 2004. Wallace, one of the best defenders in NBA history, got to join another great big defender with the name Wallace, Ben Wallace, no relation, along with other great Pistons stars en route to Detroit's 2004 championship over the Lakers. His price at the deadline was lower than it could have been just because of his antics, which are now famous in this podcast, with the refs and questions about his character. Sure, Detroit was forced to give up 4 players in the deal and 2 first-rounders, but none of them meant all that much to a team that would go on to back-to-back finals appearances in 2004 and 2005, while also being in the midst of 6 straight trips to the Eastern Conference Finals from 2003 to 2008. Yeah, this trade made the Pistons a force to reckon with. It also led to Wallace being involved in the most famous brawl in sports history, which I think is the most important thing.
Definitely the most important thing. No relation to Christopher Wallace either. Shout out Biggie. Shout out to Rasheed Wallace, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have a dope name for this podcast. So there's that. We appreciate Rasheed Wallace and what he did. Ball don't lie, of course. That also was on my list. Matt. A lot of my moves were, the moves that kind of helped really change the course of a team. And I think Rasheed Wallace, maybe not the best player on the Pistons, but one of the best players and really big part of that team, brought, and really just fit that Detroit toughness that I think they needed.
Yeah, he absolutely fit that mentality of, even the late 80s Pistons and the early 90s Pistons, Bad Boys Pistons. He fit that mentality, and it's what they needed. It's what took them over the top to their championship in 2004, their upset win over the Lakers. They just had great team chemistry with Larry Brown there, and I think it was a necessary move for the Pistons to make it. It worked out really, really well for them.
It really did. And like you said, wouldn't have gotten the Mouse of the Palace without it. So you have all 5 of yours. Did you list them?
Yeah, so you have one more.
I have one more. Okay, so this one is not the same. Ray Allen going to Seattle for Gary Payton. Very rarely do you see a move, especially at the trade deadline, where two star caliber players get swapped for each other. Gary Payton was on the final year of his deal, and Ray Allen had his best years with the Seattle Sonics. Now, they didn't really do a whole lot in terms of the playoffs and advancing in the playoffs, which is why he wanted to get traded and eventually went to the Celtics. But Ray Allen putting up, you hear these numbers in 5 seasons and 296 games, averaged 24.6 points per game, 4.2 assists, 4.6 rebounds on 44% shooting from the field, 38.6% shooting from the three-point line, and then 89.9% from the foul line. Ray Allen was a problem in Seattle. His numbers with the Sonics are so much better than every other team he played on, and he's a Hall of Famer, so his numbers on those other teams are really good too. But Ray Allen individually was in the middle of the prime of his career, not only as a shooter, but also as an athlete too. People forget how athletic Ray Allen was back in the day. All right, this is definitely, kind of what kind of kept the spark going for Seattle basketball. And I think, honestly, after trading him, I think that was a big reason why they ended up moving to Oklahoma City, because they lost that box office guy that they originally had, Jesus Shuttlesworth.
Yeah, and then they had Kevin Durant, and they were like, nah, we still don't want that.
Yeah.
But as you said, Ray Allen was obviously a problem in that time, and two star players swapping. But it really ended up working out well for Seattle, even though they didn't win much of anything. It worked out well because Ray Allen was younger than Gary Payton, so they got more years out of Ray Allen. They got more production out of him, even though Gary Payton, I think he was on that 2006 Heat team that won the NBA championship. So I guess that worked out well for Gary Payton as well. But yeah, Jesus Shuttlesworth, man, he was pretty good for the Sonics.
He was pretty good for the Sonics. Maybe they'll get an NBA team soon, hopefully for them, because that city definitely deserves it. But that's going to wrap it up here on Ball Don't Lie, episode 41. We'll continue bringing NBA trade deadline coverage because next week we'll be past the deadline. So we'll talk about some of the top trades that we saw. We'll talk about some buyout candidates also, because I think there'll be a lot of interesting players on the buyout market. And we'll keep talking about some March Madness too, because we love talking about college basketball, even though it seems like we're wrong about just about everything college basketball related. So maybe don't listen to us.
Yeah, probably don't.
Yeah, but that's going to wrap it up here. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to tune in next week.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.